What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to Dale Tales, man. Today we had an early UFC fight night because they were in Saudi Arabia. So just want to go over some of the fights here that I thought definitely stood out on this fight night, because we had some good ones. We had some doozers, but here we go. So Naimov and Kaan Ofli. So this was actually a much better fight than initially I had ever expected it to be. It was actually a lot closer, really, than I thought. I thought this one was actually kind of hard to rate overall for the most part, but Muhammad definitely came out. He was a lot more confident fighter in the beginning. Khan, on the other hand, I don't know if the spotlight was far too big for him. He's never been really thrown in a situation like this where the nerves has to kind of come out. I mean, UFC is the top of the mountain when it comes to MMA, so getting your nerves out the way can be important, but at the same time it can be pretty difficult to do. It can be a lot to ask a guy to do, especially when they're new. You know what I mean? So maybe the spotlight was just a little bit too big for him. I think the nerves just kind of got the best of him. As the fight went on, though, he definitely showed why he's actually a fighter, why he's in the UFC. He's definitely a good fighter. These guys at City Kickboxing, I don't know if it's Izzy that's working with them. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know what it is, but they're putting a lot of guys out, and they're doing a great job getting everybody in where they have to be, put them in a position to eventually be a threat in their division or either a champion in their division. That goes for Israel Adesanya too, But Khan, I have a lot of hopes for this guy, man. He can fight, So hopefully he'll definitely be a problem later on in the featherweight division, And I can see that he just needs a little bit more time to develop, but he's around the right guys. He's around the right team. And I just think the lights were just a little bit too big for him in this fight. He couldn't fight freely. The nerves just got the best of him. But he is definitely around the right guys, like I said. Just needs a little bit more development, and I think he'll be perfectly fine, man. Naimov definitely got the victory. Can't take nothing from the guy. He fought a great fight. It is what it is, So good job to both guys, but on to the next. Next up, we definitely got to talk about Shamil Gaziev and Thomas Peterson. Now listen, man, when it comes to heavyweights in any sport, whether it's boxing or MMA, everybody tends to tune in to watch because they know more than likely somebody's going to sleep. And as long as you get the right fight and the guys both show up and want to do something, because we had a doozer in the heavyweight division this night, but we also had a great one in the prelims. This was a great fight. It did not last long. Once again, I know another one of those fights, where you have two heavyweights just going at it, man. They're constantly not afraid of each other. But like I said, man, when it comes to these heavyweights, at any time, the lights can go out. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't really matter who's there or not, So this one was no different. Shamil, he just came out shooting straight shots. He's like, I'm throwing everything down the middle. I'm not throwing any looping shots. I'm not throwing any hooks because I don't want to waste the energy. That game plan seemed to have worked for him. It seems like that's exactly what he needed to do to make this fight work out for his favor. And of course, one shot down the middle, he puts Thomas Peterson down. It was a quick fight. Not going to lie, it was the very first round. It only took just a little bit over 3 minutes. For Thomas Peterson, though, man, I got to say I think one of the issues was he did not respect Shamil's power. When it comes to heavyweights, everybody got power. Doesn't matter who you are. You can be extremely confident in your power, but at the same time, if you're so confident in your own power that you decide to ignore someone else's ability to put you out, this kind of thing can definitely happen, So, but I think Thomas just came in a little overconfident for the most part, and I guess that's part of being a heavyweight, though. It is what it is. They got to do what they got to do. But all of these guys, they just got to take something from John Jones. You might not be able to take every punch that comes after you. You might be able to take some punches. Doesn't really mean that you have to. Methodically break down your opponent. Protect yourself is far more important so your career can last a lot longer. But don't just stand in the way to take unnecessary punishment. Those are the kind of things that kind of ends your career very quickly. So definitely take note from someone like John Jones in this case. All right, so next up we got Saeed Nurmagomedov, or Nurmagomedov as they pronounce, and Vinicius Oliveira. So once again, the first round in this fight was very crazy, man. Vinicius just came out and he said, you know what, Saeed hasn't been in the octagon for a little while. I'm just going to tire this guy out, putting himself in danger and everything. It actually worked. So obviously the game plan was effective. It worked for his benefit. I mean, that's kind of the end of the story of that one, you know. The very first round was just trying to get Saeed tired. Sadly, it worked out, you know. Saeed, on the other hand, for him, for the most part, it's just ring rust. He hasn't been inside the octagon for a while, and that's all it is. He's obviously been training all of this downtime, but, you know, training and being inside the octagon and going at fighting pace is very different. So when you have that ring rust and it lasts for too long, yeah, there are some parts of it that can definitely punish you in the back end. But nonetheless, he did what he could. Vinicius took advantage of the cardio in this fight. And that was kind of the end of the story, man. You know, Vinicius definitely won the fight, winning the second and the third round. The first round, you can flip a coin to see who won that one because it was very close. But Vinicius definitely won the fight overall. For Vinicius right now, I know he's calling out a lot of fighters, you know. And what I want to see for him is for him to stay active. Don't get that ring rust. Don't stay away for too long. Now, he did have a little bit of a rib injury at the end. You know, he reacted at the very end. He didn't want to show the pain during the fight, but at the very end, he definitely reacted to that rib injury. He got to get that looked at, and I hope it's something okay. I hope it's just a bruise or something like that where he can recover, because if it's a broken rib, he'll definitely be out for 3-4 months minimum before he's probably, you know, he'll be out for at least a month or two before he can train again. 3-4 months from fighting at least. So, and it could be longer than that. You never know how severe the injury actually is, but I hope he's okay. I hope he can stay active. Hopefully we see him fight again in a few months, but you know, that's kind of up in the air. You know, sometimes I think he puts himself into way too much danger. It's just kind of unnecessary. You know, some of these fights, you know, you get like an injured rib like that, it could have been a much more different story. If Saeed was more active, this fight would not have gone this way. You know, he took advantage of that, but this fight would have definitely gone a different direction if Saeed was fully in shape for this fight. So for Vinicius, just stay active, man. I think that's the most important part for him. That's kind of what I want to see the most from him. And I think the rest will definitely play out for him later on. I think he's a great fighter. Sergei Pavlovich and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now, this was the other one that I was like, man, this one has to be a banger. This one right here, someone's going to sleep. I am going to be pleasantly shocked if someone is not knocked out by the end of this fight. And then that very thing happened. Yeah, it was kind of a dud. You know, Sergei and Jairzinho, they've definitely trained with each other a lot. So in this one, they kind of got caught taking pictures of each other. That's kind of what it's called, where they're just standing in front of each other. If the ref has to pick you up and say, hey guys, let's go, let's pick it up and stuff like that, it's probably not a good look. You know, this is one of those fights that someone like Dana White would complain about. You know, you get the chance, you get the option, you're in front of the whole world, especially in a place like Saudi Arabia during Riyadh season, and you just don't do much with it. You know what I mean? It kind of reminds us a lot of that Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou fight. They both just got caught taking pictures. No one wanted to do anything. They're both defensive, knowing the lights can go out if you do something. And, you know, Sergei, in the beginning of this fight, you know, he came out a little bit, you know, he's not as reckless as he normally is. Now, Sergei, I believe he got knocked out in his last fight. I got to double check on that, but I believe he got knocked out in his last fight. So I think that kind of woke him up a little bit. And it's like, man, you know, I got to take these heavyweights a lot more seriously. I can't just go out there and be reckless. And, you know, once you get knocked out, that's it. You can get knocked out a lot easier in the future and on and on. So he came out with a little bit of a different strategy this time around. But both of these guys, in the end, were just far too cautious. And like I said, they trained with each other, so they know each other's tendencies. Jairzinho, you know, he looked a little bit slower than Sergei in this fight, and I actually expected that. Sergei is pretty quick for a heavyweight, you know, but he's not really starting any of the exchanges at the beginning of the fight. You know, he's more like, I'm going to wait for Sergei to strike because he's quicker, and if I get hit, it's fine, but I'm going to try to, you know, counter right away. Now, even when he did not counter, and we're talking about Rozenstruik here, even when he did not counter, he was still getting caught. So maybe that game plan was kind of failing him a little bit. But once again, second round, these guys are still overanalyzing each other, you know. And by the way, in the first round, Sergei does get Jairzinho on the ground, kind of controls the fight from there going out of the first round. Second round, same thing. They stand in front of each other. They're taking pictures. Literally, the ref is trying to get them to get this fight going. And they just kind of mentally paralyze themselves, like a little bit too much of analysis. The fight, like I said, was a dud overall, you know. And Sergei takes him down to the ground again. The ground control does very little damage. Gets back up, you know. Had definitely some good punches in the stand-up before taking him to the ground. But like I said, this fight, there's not really too much to talk about. In the third round, on the other hand, Jairzinho knows, hey, I got to do something. Something has to happen right here, because otherwise this guy is just winning a really easy fight. And even his coaches are trying to pick him up like, hey, you got to go after him. You got to go get the victory. But nothing was enough. Jairzinho comes out in the third round. He wants to press. You know, he wants to engage first. He wants to be the first to throw that punch. Every time he's first to throw that punch, he gets countered. And when he gets countered, he feels it. He reacts, like his eyes get real big. He's, you know, starting to stand really low, knees bent and all that, like his legs are going or something. I see why the entire fight, Jairzinho was very hesitant to be the first to throw a punch, because every time he threw a punch, he paid for it. So I definitely started understanding what his perspective was. However, they didn't have a game plan around this or anything. Now the fatigue is settling in. Of course, you're a heavyweight in the third round, so the fatigue is there. Your arms are filling up with blood because you're swinging and stuff like that. And even when you're moving backwards and just standing in front of each other like that, you see how heavily they were sweating and all that stuff. Heavyweights are just a little bit different, you know. So it is what it is. Sergei definitely got the win very easily on this one. You know, like I said, if you didn't watch this, you didn't miss too much. In the last 30 seconds of the third round, Jairzinho, you know, he starts, you know, leading with the exchanges. But once again, he gets countered, gets caught right away, was taken to the ground once again. So in all three rounds, he ends every round on the ground. Actually, except the third round, he wasn't on the ground at the very end. But every time he was taken to the ground, he made no effort in trying to get back up. Obviously, that costs us a lot of energy. And maybe he's thinking, if I try to get up and I'm gassed, this guy's going to put me away, and that's not safe, so let's just stay on the ground. Maybe that's exactly what he was thinking. But I'm not exactly sure if that was the best game plan for him, because it definitely didn't show up in the fight. Michael Venom Page versus Shara Magomedov. Now, this fight went exactly the way that I expected. Michael is moving up to middleweight for his first fight. His body's not going to be used to this. And what I expected was actually a very simple fight, even much simpler than what happened, because a whole lot of nothing happened. But I expected Michael to make sure to stay out of range, get out of range. I did not expect to see him get backed up to the cage so much where he had to dance back and forth, you know, going back and forth to kind of stay away from Shara. But I expected Shara to have a little bit of a struggle closing the distance, but because I think Michael will always just get a little hyper, a little exotic, throwing random things just to get away, you know, just create chaos. You know, that very thing did happen, but Shara was actually able to close the distance. But once he closed the distance, he wasn't able to do anything, because that's when Michael got busy just throwing random things, even flying knees and all that stuff. And Shara was not able to take advantage of those positions. Now, Michael got caught with a few shots, and believe it or not, Shara actually landed most of the punches in this fight, and he still lost the fight. So when it came to significant strikes, Shara actually won. When it came to octagon control, Shara was the one backing up Michael. Who looked flashier in the fight? Michael, but a whole lot of nothing was done. After the fight, they definitely asked Michael, hey, are we going to see you at 185 again at middleweight? And he's like, you know what, maybe I need to go back to welterweight. His body is not used to it. Exactly what was expected. For Shara, look, this one is tough, because not only do you have to close the distance, but once you close the distance, you have to survive the chaos, and anything can happen inside the chaos. You know, Michael is doing everything that he can, moving left and right, which is a lot harder than just hitting you and moving backwards. just to try to throw you off your flow, just to try to be like, hey, you know what? You don't want to be here, and I need you to back up so we can open up the center of the octagon again. But in all honesty, this one was a dud as well. Let's just call it what it is. This one was definitely a dud. For Michael Page, I'm a fan of his. He's a good fighter. He's very exciting to watch. And I always wondered what would happen when he meets elite talent in the UFC. Now, will this get him to a championship belt? I don't think so. I just don't see that happening. Shara Magomedov, let me make sure I'm saying his name right. Yeah, Shara Magomedov is one of the better fighters at 185. And he did a great job in this fight. He did what he could do with the time that he had. He started figuring it out a little too late, I think in the end of the second round and the third round. But if he had a 5-round fight, I think Shara would have definitely won. On the stat sheet, Shara won. The eye test, you would say Michael won, but if we're being honest, this should have been a complete draw. I don't think anybody won this fight. I think this fight was just a split 50-50 draw. I can't believe some of the judges actually rated this a 30-27, 30-27. And then I even heard a 29-28. That one, you can argue for that, but a 30-27, there's no way Michael won all 3 rounds. Even on the stat sheet, he didn't win the stat sheet. So I don't really fully agree with how this one was judged, but Shara gets his first loss. It was very much a dud. Sorry for the fans who are watching, but this can happen in MMA, man. And for Michael, you still got to give him his respect, because the name of the game is still hit and don't be hit. He got hit the most in this fight, but he didn't walk away with any damage. You know what I mean? And this is one of those things that allows his career to keep prolonging, because he's doing damage to others, but not taking too much damage back. That's the name of the game, hit and don't be hit. He's figured it out, and he's doing a great job staying away from being hit. Does that mean all the UFC fans will keep supporting him if this is how all of his fights, will keep going? Time will tell. We'll find out very soon, but we'll know a lot more later. And then we got to talk about the main event. Israel Adesanya and Nassourdine Imavov. So for this one, it's not complicated. Izzy didn't look like himself. In the very first round, it looks like he's trying to warm up. He's trying to find himself, trying to find his stride. He's throwing those body kicks. He's giving you everything that you expect to see from Izzy. And even Nassourdine was standing there, taking pictures for a little while. And he was like, I just got to try to do something at the end of this first round. Catches him with that uppercut. And that uppercut, for me, was the changing point of the fight. Israel felt that. That one hurt. Whether he will admit it or not is a different story. But that one hurt. It got his attention. And immediately right after that uppercut, you can see his face completely change. He's got a different focus. Kind of reminds me of that fight that he had with Kelvin Gastelum. There was a point where, Izzy got hit and he just looks at him like, whoa, wait a minute. This guy can put me away if I'm not careful. You see that same look in his eyes. And it also happened in a couple of other fights. Don't get me wrong. But that's one of those that's very memorable for most people. Especially if you're a UFC fan or an Israel Adesanya fan. It's very easy for you to remember. But immediately when that happened, I was like, Israel has to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because if that happens again, this will be a serious problem. He might not recover as quickly from that. You know what I mean? And then they come out in the second round, and now Izzy's warm. Izzy's going. Izzy's moving as fluid as we're normally used to seeing him go from beginning to end in a fight. But again, the same punch hits him, that overhand right, boom. And it dazes him, it drops him, followed up with an uppercut. A really deadly uppercut. Now that one had Israel folded on his stomach, and then he's trying to work his way back up, but Nassourdine hopped on his back and he's punching him out. If you ask me personally, the ref stopped the fight way too early. Way too early. Izzy was not out. He was hurt, but not out. You know what I mean? So that fight was definitely prematurely stopped. They should have given that a little bit more time. They did not. That's how they ended the fight, and they called it a knockout. But Izzy got up, and he was fine. Like I said, did the punch hurt? Yeah. But also, what did I say? You cannot take that overhand right again. That overhand right did damage in the first round, and it paid dividends in the second round. and then followed by that uppercut, the left uppercut while he was on the fence. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people might be questioning Israel Adesanya at this point. Is he a good fighter anymore? This, that, and the third. Man, he's one of the best fighters out there. Okay. Not everybody can beat John Jones, and that's okay. Thank you very much for your time today, guys. Definitely like and subscribe, and we will have much more coming for you. Have a good one.